my tennis coach taught me something at a young age that I think I try to use to this day is composure. When he looked over onto the court, it didn't matter if I was winning or losing. He said to me, I don't want to be able to know that you're losing. I want to always think that you're winning or in control of the situation.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Sports to Business podcast. Today we have Carla Rosenberg. Carla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, Carla, you are a hustling, bustling, leading sports marketing executive. Right now you are at SPORTFIVE. Before you were at Lagarde Plus. And also you did work at Dallas Stars. You know, I'm from Canada, so we do love hockey up there. And you were an All-American Big Ten athlete in NCAA. What a career, what a story. Can't wait to dive into all of this on the podcast.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'll go back to some of my glory days.
Yeah, we would love to start there. How did it all begin for you? You know, where did it all start? How do you get into sports?
How did I get into sports? We'll start there. I was a massive tomboy growing up and I loved all sports, but my big passion was tennis. I just fell in love with it at an early age. And my biggest goal and dream was to serve and volley at Wimbledon. So with that as an aspiration, I had a lot of work to do, but I was very fortunate. I grew up in South Africa and I moved to the States, to Dallas in the early 90s. So perspective purposes, when the Dallas Cowboys were winning multiple Super Bowl champions,
the only time
championships is when I moved here. And I was very fortunate to meet an incredible tennis coach who also has become an amazing mentor and still very much so in my life today, Jack Newman. He runs Austin Tennis Academy. And he just allowed me to, kind of pursue that path and try and realize my dreams. And he taught me all the tangibles that come with playing athletics, such as hard work and discipline. And I started traveling and playing at a very high level. And it really just was something that I had some level of success at and I was very passionate about and thoroughly enjoyed competing and wanted to do it at the highest level. And went through my juniors and ended up playing in college. So that was kind of how I got into sports and tennis, particularly.
So you were in Dallas, and then where did you go to university? It was in Texas?
I actually went to the University of Illinois for my undergrad in Champaign-Urbana.
Yes.
Played tennis there. And then I did grad school at the University of Dallas. I got my MBA there. Yeah.
Amazing. So how was the transition? Because I played football. So for football, it's like, you play in a team sport.
Yeah.
And then college, you got a scholarship to go to college and you're still playing in a team sport. But anytime I kind of speak to, great tennis players like yourself, it's always a lot of traveling and tours, especially on your own. How was that at growing up, going to university and then continuing that while you're still in 5 classes a semester?
Yeah, well, you touched on that. Tennis is a very interesting sport. It's an individual sport.
Yeah.
And then you go to college and it becomes a team sport.
Team sport.
But in reality, you're still competing against your teammates, right? So that was a very interesting dynamic. Again, another good learning lesson that's probably a whole nother podcast. But I think learning to be independent and travel on my own. And, at a very young age, I was doing that. I have younger twin brothers and they were, I wanted to play tennis and, my mom had to take care of the boys. And so I would go travel on my own and be playing tournaments. So at a young age, I learned how to, be responsible, had to kind of fend for myself. And so I'm super grateful for those experiences, honestly. And I think it's definitely because of playing that individual sport that has given me some attributes that I've been able to hopefully extend into other areas of my life.
And how was the journey during school? And you did your MBA after as well. So what was that whole experience like after tennis ended?
So I had to do an internship before I graduated for my last semester. And what I'd ever done was play tennis. I didn't know. And I was fortunate when I went on my recruiting trip, I had met a woman who was working at World Team Tennis. And I asked if I could do an internship there because at the time I was in Chicago. And wasn't a bad thing to be your first boss ever to be Billie Jean King. So that was kind of a really cool experience. And of course it was in tennis, the sport that I loved and I knew. And so when the minute I set foot into that office, that was like my first entree into the working environment. I was like, wow, if this is what work is about, I want to do this. But I knew nothing. Like I said, I played tennis. I got my degree in kinesiology with an emphasis in sports psych. I was thinking, I'm either going to coach or have a tennis academy or play tennis, something in tennis, right? Never like business. But when I got there, it really like energized me. And I was thinking to myself, the tennis mindset, well, in order to be good, you have to train really hard to set yourself up for success, that kind of mentality. So I was like, I've got to go back to school. I got to get a business degree. Because at least I've got to do my part and set myself up to prepare the best that I can. And then hopefully I might have a chance to work in an industry like this. So that's how it all kind of started for me, truth be told.
That's amazing. It reminds me of my story. So I actually did business degree, but I was all about football and I would be in the back of the class. I'm going to go to the CFL. I'm going to get drafted. But fourth year comes around, you're like, you know what? That's probably not going to happen. I should look at a backup plan. So that's what I did. My MBA was like, hey, I need to go back to school. Yeah. And I'm going to use what I've learned in football and business, but I need to really build a foundation. So totally get what you're saying. And I can relate with you because it's all about sports until you're about to graduate. Correct. Which I think for a lot of student athletes, it's tough to realize because you're like, I'm going to make it, but you always got to make sure you're balancing school and athletics. Why you call a student athlete? I think on that note, so when you did your MBA, how did you take all the energy from tennis? Like, how did that direct you towards the career you're on today?
Well, I think, like I said, that opportunity to do that internship, and like I said, it happened to be in tennis, sports marketing, allowed me to recognize that I wanted to work at the highest level in sports. And I didn't know what that really looked like then. I didn't really understand the landscape, and I didn't know a lot of people, right, in the industry. Yeah. So I knew it was very important for me to learn and to have and surround myself with good mentors and teachers to be able to kind of soak it all in. And again, I'm very fortunate to do that. I mean, I started out, when I started my MBA, I was doing an internship simultaneously with the Texas Rangers and the Dallas Stars. At that time, it had the same ownership. So I worked a baseball season and then I worked a hockey season under the same company umbrella, but got to do work in two different professional sports franchises, if you will, right? And get an understanding of that.
How everything works.
And I will tell you, I learned about the ticket department, community relations, marketing. I didn't know all these different areas, but there's even a merchandise department, right? There was so much sponsorship, etc. So I was just a sponge trying to soak it all in. And I think, that's always how I've learned. That's how I learned to play tennis, surround myself with people who were better than me, that I could learn from, that could challenge me, and so that I could improve. And that was the same thing, putting myself in an environment, trying to have, I was fortunate. My very first boss was a terrific mentor and teacher and exposed me to a lot. And like I said, I was going to school at the same time. So I was just wanting to learn, and he allowed for me to ask questions and allow me to, be exposed to things that I otherwise wouldn't have.
It's, you being on the top of your game and still being so humble, I think it speaks to the personality you need, right, to make it big in life.
I don't, that's very kind to say. I think it's just you're always learning and growing. I don't think you ever really
Yeah.
arrive, you know, and every day I meet someone more brilliant, and, you know, which, you know, excites me and what helps me want to get better. And, you know, we're just in an evolving world. You know, technology, there's so many great minds, there's so many awesome people doing amazing things, and just to kind of, you know, like find your field of fascination, learn from those brilliant minds around you, and see how you can get better and what works well for you.
Yeah, and always knowing that there's always somebody, just like in sports, somebody working harder than you to take your spot.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right?
Absolutely.
So you always got to keep working.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing you did mention is that an internship, and this is something that I've seen true for me, is when you get a chance to do something which might be messy, might not be the most, you know, glamorous position, you always want to say yes. And looks like you said yes to those positions while you're doing your MBA, which is probably a stepping stone to where you are now. So how do you advise student athletes today, or students in general, or young professionals, to do the hard things, because they will take you somewhere, you know, better than where you are today?
You know, I tell students a lot, like, because my story when I started was I followed my instinct. And I made a decision that I think I want to work in professional sports. I told you I went back to school to get my MBA. And I knew nothing. So I felt like I needed the experience. So I didn't think I was deserving of getting a job right away, that working in the industry, meeting the people, figuring it out. And there I was, getting an opportunity to do that, getting paid an hourly rate. At the time, I was living in Dallas, working in Arlington. And so it was like a 45-minute to an hour drive there and back. And like 60 home games, you know, it was a lot. And on the flip side, I was getting offered full-time positions to work, you know, to be a head tennis coach at a Division I college, to get my master's paid for. And I chose the harder path, not because I was trying to prove a point, because deep down, I believed if this is an industry I wanted to work in, I needed to get that experience. And I thought that that tennis journey I could fall back on if it didn't work itself out. And believe me, I had my doubts along the way. I mean, you know, a year in, when I'm 2 years out of college, when my friends have settled into the work environment, they're making a good salary, I'm still getting paid hourly at an intern rate, going to college. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should have taken those jobs.
Yeah, and look at my other friends right now.
Yeah. So, you know, but I'm super grateful I did, because you know what? I have interns today, and everything I've ever asked them to do, I've done myself. So I feel like it's a full circle moment.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. How do you keep going regardless of the doubts? How do you remind yourself that this is the right path when things get tough?
Look, not everything's always rainbows and butterflies, right? In everything you do in life. And I think athletics is a great kind of platform that teaches you those attributes, right? You have to adjust to adversity, to injuries, to, you know, the weather conditions. It's the same thing in work, right? You're going to get curveballs tossed your way all day long, and it's how you respond to it. And, you know, my tennis coach taught me something at a young age that I think I try to use to this day, is composure. When he looked over onto the court, it didn't matter if I was winning or losing. He said to me, I don't want to be able to know that you're losing. I want to always think that you're winning or in control of the situation. Poise, grace. And those are things, you know, that I've tried to take with me to my real life too. When things are going crazy, because they will, and things will not always go your way, how you handle that. And I think if you can be poised and confident and strong and willing to adapt and adjust and be flexible, I think that's hard, but it's all part of growth.
And the other thing, as you were talking, it came to me, Carla, is as when you're a leader and you have a team that looks up to you and looks for you for direction. If you're not calm in a crisis situation, the team will not be calm either. That's probably more important than just for yourself.
Oh, 100%. And look, I'm trying, it's funny that I'm relating tennis the whole time, right? Because, and I know this, and I know this is kind of your theme of your podcast, but you know, in the sport of tennis, you're making decisions under high pressure, fast paced situations.
Yep.
If I'm having a really bad day, I can't tap out. It's not a sport where I can say, you know what, hey, you on the bench, will you play for me today? I'm just not feeling it. Okay. And it's the same thing because I learned that in my formative years. I think that's what's allowed me to also work live events now, making, you know, decisions and confidently, you know, under high pressure situations, right? And being able to try and lead a team, you know, to get the best result, which in sport is to win. And in my career is to execute at the highest level. So that's another form of winning, I guess.
That's amazing. So back to your story then, Carla, after your internships, your MBA was done. So then what happened next? How did you find your next opportunity?
So I was then fortunate after being in that system to get my entry-level position, my first job at the Texas Rangers Baseball Club, working for Jeff Kogan, at the time was the chief operating officer. And like I said, a terrific mentor and teacher to me, and allowed me to really sit in on all the meetings and learn from him and get exposed to how a professional sports team actually works. In 04-05, the Dallas Stars lockout was ending. Yep. Typically, they had employees working both seasons, right? Like going from baseball to hockey, so having no life.
Yeah.
And at that point, they decided they wanted to fill the front office for the hockey team. And I was asked if I wanted to go over and lead their community marketing department. And that was really an area that I felt excited about, and went over then after working 2 seasons at the baseball into hockey, running their community relations, a year into that, becoming the executive director for the Dallas Stars Foundation. And really that's where I found my wheelhouse. And I'll use sports again. You know, when you're a kid and you get exposed to all these different sports, and they're like, well, Tanvir, why did you pick football? I'm going to assume because you loved it and you had some success at it. And that's why you picked football over baseball, hockey, you grew up in Canada, right? All the things.
Exactly.
Well, that's kind of what happened. Once I started working within that area of community relations, nonprofits events, I really found my area of interest, and I was starting to excel at it. I was energized and passionate about it. And then we were fortunate in 06 to have the NHL All-Star game, and I was very involved with that. And again, had my amazing experiences working in that organization during my developmental years, right out of the gate. Yeah. And then I resigned after probably doing 7 or so seasons, and realized I wanted to work on the agency side of things, see what it was like. I'd worked now in professional sports teams. I had a good understanding of but I always believed there was another side to the business. Yep. I worked at 2 agencies. And then in 2012, I went rogue and I formed Matchpoint agency.
Your own business.
Yes. And what I wanted to do was be able to work with professional athletes and help them with their foundations and their charity events. Yep. And in the beginning, I would take on any projects because I needed to pay the bills. Yep. And so I did that. I did a lot of marketing projects. I did some events, some charity stuff. I was a little all over the place. And, a few years into it, got a great opportunity out in California. And, I thought that was so awesome being in California and, kind of that whole life. And I was like, Carla, what are you doing? You are walking on the dashed line in the middle of the road. And to be in the dash road, in that dashed line in the middle of the road is a dangerous place.
Dangerous place. Yeah.
I said, you need to pick a lane and accelerate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I did. I said, I am going to only focus on the areas where I can really add value. And that is where I felt like, and where I enjoyed the most. And that was working with, athletes with their charities, executing their events. And from that day onwards, I had to say no to a lot of things, which is very hard when you have your own business. You want to say yes to everything.
Yes.
And just focus on the areas that I was passionate about and that I felt like I could add value. And that's when things for me really started to kind of, fall into place in a really marvelous way. And I was doing an event where Lagardère, a global sports marketing agency based in Paris, was the sponsor, and I got to meet the folks there. And the president of the organization, who then became my boss, asked me, what did I ever think about being a part of a global sports marketing agency? And I, always had these big goals. I didn't quite know, what that looked like. And he, we spoke about that. I offer a service. I have a book of business that this could be very valuable to an agency environment. And so in 2018, Lagardère acquired Matchpoint agency. And in 2020, we just, a private equity group out of Germany purchased it. So same organization, we just rebranded to Sport5 during the pandemic.
Wow.
And so I've been with the Global Sports Marketing Agency, which is now Sport5, for the last nearly 5 years.
Yeah.
Already. Yes.
What a story. You did your own business. You realized that you were good at something, that you're passionate about something. You said no to many opportunities, but that allowed you to accelerate, get acquired by this amazing firm that got acquired again or rebranded now to Sport5. That's amazing. Like it's you cannot plan this out, but you have to take the right actions, right? So like, how do you know that if you're doing these actions, it will take you somewhere like where you are today? Did you always kind of know that you're in the right direction,
I wish I could say,
yeah,
I had this all planned out, and the ultimate, I did not. But I always just trusted my instinct, and I followed my passion and what felt right to me. And again, it's not always the popular choice. I told you, I did the internship and I went to grad school and I moved back home to Dallas instead of, just as one example. But it's what felt right for me to go to the next level. If I wanted to compete on that next stage, if I wanted to not only, be recognized in this area locally, but nationally and internationally, to be able to work on some of the biggest sporting events in the world, working with the highest profile athletes, I knew I need to scale the business. I needed to have other amazing people around me that I could learn from and grow from, and more resources to pull from. So it comes with time and experience, and sometimes also just meeting the right person, at the right time, and some good luck, but a lot of hard work.
Hard work that makes good luck. Yeah, if you work hard enough, you get lucky.
Yes.
Now, it also sounds like you stopped forcing things. So let's say in tennis or football, I'm not really that familiar with tennis, but maybe you're forcing the serve and it's not going your way, or in football, really trying to, do something. I remember like trying this move really hard, but it's not working for me. The moment you stop forcing things and go back to your basics, things get easier, but you get more successful. And that seems like kind of the story since you started your business, that you found your groove, you really focused on the things you were good at. Things got easier, but you got more successful.
Yeah, let's use something that we can maybe both relate to on that point. You have performance and outcome goals, right?
Yeah.
Outcome goals you can't necessarily control. You're not going to control whether your team's going to win or lose that football game, right?
Yep.
But your performance goals, you can, right? You can go to the gym 5 times a week, you can eat right, you can sleep well, you can do all those things. And I think that's kind of, ultimately you have these aspirational goals, right? Of like, I want to do this, that, and the other. Those are, something to strive for and kind of where our North Star is. And so we work hard to always, try and achieve that. And I think, that's kind of out of the control, but you can control all the details and all the little things that matter and the relationships and, just the ability to learn from others, to keep growing, to keep improving, to keep, working hard, learning new things. And so that's kind of what I focus on, is to try and just have, enjoy the work. It's really,
enjoy the journey.
Yes, it's all part of the process. I mean, and hopefully the pandemic taught, everybody that.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
That's kind of where, the focus, because just like you said, if you're trying so hard to force things, that's usually where you land up. Your head gets in the way, your technique gets messed up. Obviously you need to have that desire and that grit and that motivation. And those are things that will help you get to ultimately where you're trying to go. And success looks different for everybody.
Exactly. It's not what I define success might be different than what you define success. So
yes.
I think our performance goals should also be different based on where we want to get to, but we should focus on the actions over just the results.
Yeah.
That's all we can control.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the pandemic, how was that for you? How was the initial announcement? How did you navigate through that personally and professionally?
Yes, when that occurred,
I
work in professional sports and events.
Mm-hmm.
And everything shut down. And there has never really been a day in my life where I've honestly had nothing to do. And it was the first time when the phone calls started coming in and they're like, cancel.
Wow.
And you start realizing, wow, this is something real. This is happening, right? It was a big shock at first. And I recognized right away, we could be in a lot of trouble in our business because of that. And, the first 2 weeks, you kind of are just like everybody, we were starting to realize what's going on. And then started shifting to finding a solution. And I'll tell you, I'm not tone deaf to what happened during the pandemic. It was a terrible time for so many. But for me personally and professionally, it was a very special time because it paused for the first time in a long time, forced me to stop, to kind of almost recalibrate, to adjust, to restructure, to think through things. And we came out of the pandemic stronger than before. And how we kind of pivoted, we'll use that word, is we created a virtual event platform that we were able to move all our events virtually. From never having done a virtual event in my career, we'll end up doing 66 between June and December of 2020. We're busier than ever, focused on one entity trying to become experts and professionals in an area that has now served us well, and we've been able to continue to utilize that and with hybrid events, etc. But also we changed how we communicated with one another, how we collaborated. It made us better as a team, and allowed us to improve our processes in the other areas, recognizing that we will go back to live events at some point because there is no replacement for it.
Absolutely.
Even though we had tremendous success with the virtual platform, and I learned so much about the technology and about myself and about my teammates. And it was a wonderful way to stay connected during a time when people felt so disconnected. And so for me, coming out of that professionally, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to us. And we've been very fortunate to grow upon that and reconnect with a lot of people that you don't make the time for when you're moving a million miles an hour, right? So for me, I've shifted priorities a lot, and I've tried to have more balance, and I've tried to be a lot more aware, and you just become grateful for a lot more things and a better perspective. And I think personally, it was a good time to maybe pause.
Yep.
But I'm ready to go again in a large way.
I love it. That's great to hear. I think and across other people I've spoken to as well on the podcast, most folks that actually treat a crisis like the pandemic with a response mindset that, hey, how you respond to things is what determines your outcome, have always, or most of them have said that for them, it was a great thing that happened, not being tone deaf, but it was something that allowed them, like you said, to pause, to restructure, to rethink, and find new ways, personally and professionally, of finding success. So I think it all comes back to, how do you respond to the situation that you're presented?
So, well,
yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And I think, it impacted so many people in so many different ways,
Amazing.
But I think everyone had an impact, positive or negative, right? So, and again, it's how we come out of it. And it's now, there's a lot of, energy. We're back, we're emerging from that. We're traveling again. We're back in the office, even though I'm working from my home office today. But it's great to be able to collaborate with everyone and be in person, and kind of,
awesome.
The energy of a live event, and get all your fans back to the arenas, and all of that we got so used to and took for granted. And now it's like exciting.
I can't wait to be back in a stadium full of people, right? That's my dream.
I know.
Well, before I let you go, Carla, one piece of advice you have for executives or leaders today, just coming out of 2022 and sprinting into the summer and the fall season?
Oh my gosh. Advice. Look, I think, maybe on something that I touched on here, I always say, find your field of fascination. You should be on fire with what you do. I did that with tennis. I was able to, play at, for me, the highest level I could possibly play at, because I was so passionate about it. And now I'm trying to translate that to my career. We spend a lot of time working, and, we had a lot of downtime during the pandemic. So I think you want to spend your time doing things you love and you're excited about, because it reflects in so many different ways. And so maybe that's my advice.
Well said. Well, how can potential clients or just people want to get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you, Carla?
Feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I will tell you this, don't just connect with me. Say how you met me or got to know me, so we can form a rapport. I don't just accept connections. I want to genuinely know the person. And the reason why I do that is because a lot of people will ask me, oh, I see you know Tanvir. We're looking to hire, talk to him. Tell me about him. And I want to be able to give a meaningful connection if that's the case, right? So please connect with me on LinkedIn. That's a great way to, from a professional standpoint.
Well, I think for everybody listening and watching, that's how you actually build relationships. So please take Carla's advice moving forward. So awesome, Carla. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. It's a pleasure having you on and kind of going through your story. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. And I look forward to meeting you in person, since you're in
Dallas
now. So
absolutely.
Maybe we'll go out to a game. We'll go to Cowboys game or something in the season.
Love it.
All right.
Thanks, Carla.
Well, take care. Thank you so much.